What exactly did you see and hear yesterday?
Well, in terms of the context of what was going on in the House, and I know there's been some confusion in describing this to Canadians, we were supposed to be having a vote, and it's always the rules that as soon as the bells stop and the whips march to the front to the Speaker, and everybody's in their seat, because if you're not in their seat when the Speaker starts reading the motion, your vote won't count, right? So we've never had people, and certainly I've been in Parliament 5 years, maybe it's happened 15 or 20 years ago, but I've never seen members, when we're supposed to be in our seats, getting in the aisle to impede the progress of the Speaker. Now, I'll be really clear about this, because there's no doubt I know exactly what was going on, because other MPs told me if they delayed the vote by even 3 minutes, by the time that vote was over, it would be too late for the government to introduce the motions and amendments on the medically assisted dying bill C-14. So it was you know, a bit. I use the word mischief in terms of standing there. There was no intention to create.
So this is the NDP. These are delay tactics not just the NDP.
Not just the NDP and Conservatives together were milling about. It was if viewers could imagine, if you were sort of at a party and there were little knots of conversation happening here and there, friendly, jovial, but with the intent of having the C-14 amendments delayed once again.
Right.
And frankly, that's a whole nother issue, because I'm very concerned about C-14 in its current state. But let me continue that what happened was then when the government whip, Gord Brown, from Leeds Granville, was obstructed. Now, the Prime Minister is the last person in that room who should have done anything about it. And he has admitted before us all that it was unwise. It certainly was very unwise. But he went from his seat to reach out his arm to bring Gord Brown out through the knot of MPs who are obstructing him. He inadvertently, and I absolutely, he was turned away from Ruth Ellen. And Ruth Ellen was, everything she said in the House was accurate and honest. Everything the Prime Minister had said in the House was accurate and honest. Their stories were not in contradiction to each other. She said she was struck, and the Prime Minister said in colliding with her, he hadn't seen her, she was behind him. She didn't claim anything differently. So he went back to his seat and then realized that he'd collided with Ruth Ellen without seeing her, and he came back immediately looking beyond contrite. He looked mortified as he tried to reach her. She passed right next to me, because my seat is where she had to go by to leave the chamber. She was genuinely upset. I mean, it shakes a person to have a collision of any kind. It's emotional. It actually has a physical effect. And Ruth Ellen was genuinely upset and was tearful as she left the chamber. And the Prime Minister was trying to reach her to apologize, and he apologized immediately in the House when she was back in her seat, so he could tell her how sorry he was. It was inadvertent.
So if it was genuine and if it was inadvertent, then just how serious is it? Because many Canadians communicating with us today say, you know, move on. There are serious issues here. It's Elbowgate, you know, trivializing it. Or is there a more serious issue at the core here?
The serious issue at the core has been the partisan sniping and escalation of tensions with the Conservatives and the NDP together having successfully executed a parliamentary coup in calling a snap vote on Monday morning that nobody expected, which left the Liberals almost losing that vote. That's only the 11th time in the history of Parliament that we've had a tie, had to be broken by the Speaker. That led to a further acceleration. Now, bear in mind, over C-14, we've seen the government feeling they must bring forward a bill by June 6th. I mean, the context of the tensions here is important to understand. The deadline, which I think is an honestly held belief by the Minister of Justice and Minister of Health, that they must have a bill in place by June 6th.
That's what the Supreme Court ordered, yes.
Well, no, I don't happen to agree with that analysis. The Supreme Court said that on June 6th, absolutely, the criminal code sections that are in conflict with the Charter will be invalidated as of June 6th. Doctors and patients in that circumstance can be guided by what the Supreme Court said was acceptable. For good reason, many doctors say, don't leave us with interpreting a Supreme Court decision. We'd prefer to have a framework in law. But will the world crash down on our heads if we don't have C-14 through by June 6th? Absolutely not, in my view. And I think the bill needs a significant improvement to be consistent with the court's judgment that they gave us unanimously in Carter for what we must do. So, but again, to explain the context, the tensions are high. The government the Liberals started using closure on bills. I didn't think I'd see that again. I thought we'd see the end of frequent use of closure with the change in government. And the mandate letters the Prime Minister sent to his House leader suggested that parliamentary procedure would be more respectful, that the government wouldn't use the sort of "we've got the majority, so might makes right." We had 4 years of that from the Harper Conservatives. And I don't want to see it again. But when the other parties, and I would say I'm trying to be as fair and nonpartisan as possible here, the Conservatives and the NDP have definitely been non-cooperative with the House leader for the Liberals. And so he has resorted to using the very anti-democratic tactics of the previous government, which are so unacceptable. And so what provoked yesterday's events, in my mind, is that the Monday tie vote, which caused the Liberals to escalate and bring forward a motion which is so anti-democratic, I don't know if even the previous government would have thought of such a thing as to say no one can do anything. Basically, the government side is going to control whether we can adjourn, what goes on, whether we're meeting 24 hours a day. No one will have any control except the government party. That's completely unacceptable. So the reaction from members to think, okay, if that's the way they want to play it, we can muck up their votes by standing around in the aisles. And if we delay this by even 3 minutes, they don't get C-14 in. Once you have that kind of escalation, somebody, the more mature group of people in the room, need to say, let's dial this down. And I'm hoping that the Liberal government will realize we need civility in Parliament, we need respect in Parliament, and going to increasingly brutal measures to bring in C-14 on time is not working for respect in Parliament.
Clearly.
And that if they can just take that away, perhaps we can take a breath and start working well together again, because this is not just about an incident of jostling. This is a larger question of we're meeting at least until the end of June this session, and we don't want Parliament to devolve into a gong show where people will use anything they can think of to push back against a majority that's using their majority of seats to bring in measures that are simply anti-democratic.
Well, we will see. Ronna Ambrose speaking at 10. We expect she'll be addressing this in just 30 minutes, so maybe this will ramp up again today, but we will watch and see. Elizabeth May, listen, thank you as always for the time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Heather, very much.